Hi, well, thank you for joining really quickly. Let's just give it a minute or two to see if give people a chance to join here. Um, Good to have you here. Well, first and foremost, thanks for joining today. We're going to be talking about developer productivity, leveraging AI. And if you have first a little bit of ground rules, if you have any questions, drop them in the chat. We'll have somebody monitoring them. And this is the first time that I've done a webinar where I think I'm going to be popping back and forth between a couple of different screens. So I want to give people a little bit of a flavor of the different tools that are out there and what you can do with it. So if things get a little janky, apologize in advance. But I'll start with a quick introduction. Nice to meet everybody. My name is Brian Hayden. I'm a solution architect at Concurrency. You can see that QR code if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out to me anytime. A little bit about me. I've been in consulting for a couple of decades. So I'm a nerd growing up, wiring Raspberry Pis and doing all sorts of crazy stuff. I'm really active in a lot of different communities. I do software process improvement. Network is one of the clubs that I work with. I'm an active outdoorsman. You're going to see this like outdoorsy theme, in pretty much every one of my presentations. And fun little fact about me, I'm a twin. So let's talk about let's just talk a little bit about the opportunity here for increasing productivity for developers. Um, as I've started to adopt AI into my natural workload, I have found a lot of the cognitive load being dissipated. I can meet, tighter deadlines. Somebody can come up and ask me for something, a piece, proof of concept, or some artifacts, and I can just leverage some of that to low-code tools or whatever to facilitate that. And most developers are facing tight deadlines. This technology stack is changing on a daily basis, hourly basis sometimes with the announcements that are coming out. And a lot of the stuff that they do is pretty repetitive. So what can AI actually offer? Absolutely faster coding. The numbers are proving it. And we'll dive into a little bit about that. But it can also help you like debug things faster, have fewer errors, write better unit tests, and get rid of some of the drudgery of being a professional developer. Today, we'll do a little bit of a journey. We'll talk about, this isn't going to be your typical Copilot, GitHub Copilot kind of demo. My colleague, Mac, is going to be doing a talk on that in a few days. And check that out if you want to get a deep dive into productivity, specifically within like Visual Studio, Visual Code. I'll talk a little bit about it. But I'm going to look at some of the other skills that you need to pay attention to when thinking about using AI as a developer or in developer workloads, whether you're developer, tester, scrum master, whatever. So we'll start a little bit about workflow optimization. We'll talk about some of the AI automation tools, coding assistance, what's coming in the DevOps pipeline, and then I did want to touch a little bit on some of the cool things that are coming out. So that said, let's go ahead and set sail. Every developer's journey begins with, some sort of planning or understanding of the problem definition, whether that's requirements gathering, trying to choose the right tools. And I think it's important to kind of frame that up, that there's so much more that goes into the development process than just using Copilot or just writing lines of code. So if we start to think about how I would compartmentalize some of these things. There's the project management aspect of it. There's the development aspect of it, and then most developers are tasked with building and creating continuous integration pipelines or deploying the application. Um, Maybe you're part of a big organization and you have specialized individuals to do it, but full stack developers are kind of expected to be, part of every one of the cogs in the wheel. And so I like to think of, AI as a little bit, if you take this like adventure theme, as like your GPS. So like Bing, tell me how to get to Ouray, Colorado. It's going to draw a map. It's going to give you like how long it's going to take you to get there, and be kind of a guide for you. You can ask it, hey, I'm lost. It's almost like an adventurer having a map in their hands and say like, how do I figure out how to get out of this forest that I'm in? Um, but what if you try to ask Bing, map out the directions from here at my office at Concurrency to Latvia? Bing's going to struggle with that because it's a specialized tool. It doesn't it doesn't understand how to travel the ocean, and your map isn't going to get you there. So so you have to think about which tools are going to be appropriate for you to use and in what kind of context. Uh, and as we start to think about those, I wanted to bring up a couple of little statistics. 92% of developers are using some sort of AI tool in their tool chain. That number actually comes from like 2023, from a study that was performed with GitHub and Microsoft. And I wanted to call that out because today it should be 100. I mean, I think every developer is technologically savvy enough to use these tools, and should be using it. And I hope that they are, whether it's Copilot or if they're just using ChatGPT or Claude or whatever. I think, it should be pretty close to 100% unless it's blocked by the network. Um, but 75% of the people that are actually using something like GitHub Copilot feel like they're at least or more productive than they were before. And I know that there's been some numbers that have been cited that, 40% productivity increase, 20% productivity increase. Those numbers kind of fluctuate depending on the time of the year, or how effective that particular tool set is, or who's asking for it. But I think that I think there's definitely proof in the pudding that it's making people more productive, and it helps them really focus on like the more important tasks that they have to do, and less on the boilerplate drudgery that they do on a day-to-day basis. I found this interesting quote, thinking about 2025. And this comes from Amy Brady, who's a CIO, and she says that 2025 is going to be a very fascinating year with some of these tools as we start to scale. And that's the important part, as we start to scale these technologies. We're not far enough in the journey where she could confidently say that it's going to replace entry-level code generation. But I think that like entry-level coding is going to be a thing of the past. So, all right, getting back to this like planning thing, what's in your backpack? What are the tools that a typical software developer is going to care about? And I'm not going to drain the slide, but I wanted to bring this up as, sort of a talking point that reinforces that idea that it's not just about coding, which there's really good demonstrable tools about, but there's other aspects of the software development lifecycle like planning and project management. Monitoring and logging are things that developers use all the time when they're trying to trace down bugs. Security and compliance and getting feedback, if your code is up to snuff. Test automation is something that's becoming more and more relevant in the AI space. And then just general collaboration between your team members, like how are you using AI, throughout the day to keep you on task, on target, and focus on things that you need to be doing to get your user stories complete. So I talked about the GPS a couple of minutes ago, and to really kind of emphasize this point, like there's a lot of different types of GPS. If I'm hiking in the woods, I probably have a little handheld, get this little smartwatch that has, GPS in it too. And that's the sort of like, help me if I get lost, which direction is north, where was my last checkpoint? But if I'm driving in a car, I might have like a Garmin. I might have, built-in navigation in my car, and that helps me get from place to place on the road. But it's not really good for things like off-road or, there's a complementary use of these different tools. But if I'm in an airplane, none of those tools work, right? So we have a different set of GPS tools, and the same thing if I'm traveling on the water. So if we think back to that last slide, about all the different workflow options that a developer has confronted with, we need to start thinking about like what are the tools that are gonna help assist them. And I'll just take the first one with project management. So how do I build effective DevOps boards? Like how am I managing my Agile and Scrum process? And are there tools that I can use to accelerate some of that? And that's what we're going to dive into. So we'll start off this journey talking about the workflow, optimization. And I have a couple of use cases that I think are really important to, accentuate. First, what can I do to research internal documents and gather information as I'm starting to put together a user story? And I think that the M365 Copilot is a fantastic tool for that. You can use M365 to search things like Teams, your own personal OneDrive, any kind of shared files that are inside the Microsoft ecosystem, and pull that information together to help you formulate an idea, a feature, even search through emails about what were some of the customer requests that have been coming in the last couple of weeks or last couple of months. But that's great for internal, and I use it constantly all day long. In terms of external information, though, I've started to use things like OpenAI, ChatGPT to complement Microsoft 365. And so, as an example, I don't know if anybody's using deep research, in ChatGPT, and I use it at least a couple of times a day to formulate things. But now that I've got like my internal documentation, I've got kind of a feature idea, I can take that and prompt ChatGPT or another LLM and find deeper information. I might even ask it for things like, what are some good architectural patterns to solve this particular problem? And get some ideas that I might not have been thinking about that are well documented, things that I can, dive a little bit deeper into. Another thing that you can use, these tools are going to be a little bit more like off the shelf, baked into things like ADO or GitHub. But create your own custom Dev GPT. Use it for your team. Ground it against your documents that you might already have, or point it at your team wiki, and have an easy way for developers just to ask questions that they might think are kind of stupid. And then another typical use case that I see a lot of developers using it is nobody likes searching through huge, massive log files. And that's a great use case for using generative AI. It can get through those documents way faster than you can, and your eyes won't be glazing over all day long as you start to dig into it. Another couple ideas is, let's say that you're working in Slack, you're working in Teams. I mentioned the Microsoft 365 Copilot, fantastic at summarizing discussions. If I'm in a meeting, I can ask it in real time, like what are the next steps, who's doing what, what's something that I might have forgotten to ask before we end this call. And it can give me that immediate feedback based on the transcript that's going on. But you can also use it in other ways, like hit a dev channel that you might be having a longer communication and say, hey, what did I miss today? Catch me up on the things that people are looking for. It can give you quick status reports that way. Some of the AI tools are giving you like a view into the code base, so you can look holistically at what's changed across your ecosystem. And it's reducing just the amount of time that you spend chasing down information. So fantastic ways to use it. I mentioned that I use ChatGPT and M365 Copilot quite a bit. And another thing that I do is I spend a lot of time working on how to actually prompt some of these tools to get the kind of results that I'm looking for. So the first thing you might want to think about using this for is creating user stories. I mean, they're tedious, and kind of hard to work with and use. So, here I have a little sample of generating user story using, maybe you could do this in Copilot, worked really well. I could show you this example. I will show you this example actually. But you can use this format to generate a pretty verbose, well-documented user story. And then after you get that user story, another thing that developers really hate to do is spend a lot of time on doing task breakdowns. So I wrote this prompt. We can share this deck out, or you can reach out to me and I can share this with you. And you can see the task breakdown here. So let me go back to this screen. And this is where I told you it might get a little janky. And I'm going to run this in another application really quick. So let's create a new. This is just I'm using GPT-4o. Not that we have to use that. I could use 4.5. Let's try that. I haven't tried that yet. Let's use 4.5. Generate a user story for an AI-powered deduction matching feature in a trade promotion project. And pretty simple. I would expect that most people would have a little bit more to add to that. But here you can see, as a deductions analyst, I want an AI-powered deductible matching system so that I can automatically match customer deductions. It's fantastic. Look at the acceptance criteria that it's generating. The system must automatically extract relevant text data from image-only PDF documents using OCR. That sounds like it's really good. The system must accurately identify potential matches using between customer deductions and existing contracts. Sounds reasonable too. So that seems to be pretty fantastic. Let's see about that other prompt that I had around breaking this into tasks. So using this user story, help me with the task breakdown. And I will cut and paste what we had before. And let's give it a whirl. Or let's use the other side of the window. And here's a development task. So you can see it's starting to break down the front end tasks, design a user-friendly interface, back end tasks, develop an OCR engine to process the PDF documents, implement the fuzzy logic, create an API endpoint, and develop APIs to handle some manual match confirmations, rejections, et cetera, things that you might have to do from a business standpoint. Those are all pretty fantastic. So this is something that it's a great starting point. You may or may not want to use each one of those stories or each one of these elements, in your task breakdown that might not be relevant, but I've just done maybe a half hour's worth of work in just a couple of minutes here using ChatGPT. I did test this as well. I played with this a little bit in the Microsoft Copilot, and it works great too. You get really good user stories. The nice part about using Microsoft Copilot is that it has the ability to bring in some context about the project that you might be working on. The downside is that it sometimes picks up signals, from other projects that you're working on, and you start getting a little bit more hallucinations. So I like using a little less grounded thing like ChatGPT because I can kind of isolate the requests a little bit better that way. So if we go back to the presentation, we did the user story creation. Here was an example slide of what it would look like. Another thing that I like to do is I like to play a little bit with like prompts and try to create templates for them. Here is me playing around with a tool in the Power Platform around the prompts so that I could create, little variables that I could inject into it and whatnot. Overall, the impact of AI in the workflow, 100% is going to boost productivity. It's going to take that cognitive load of some of the repetitive tasks. Most developers are looking forward to like sitting down and slamming some code out. They don't want to do things like task breakdown and user story management. So this is a great, a great way for them to stay focused on what they really like in their career. And then just a couple of quick tips that I have. I think it's important to spend time every day learning how to use and adapt these tools into your workload. So there's definitely going to be some upskilling. And if you're a manager in this space, you should be encouraging your developers or the people on your teams to like look for opportunities to use some of this workflow automation. All right, so let's talk about some of the AI automation. I think about like AI automation. Let's, break it down into like Power Automate, Power Apps, Copilot Studio, the low code version of AI tools that are being enabled for everybody right now. In my mind, this rapid prototyping is fantastic because it bridges the gaps between, your developers' capacity in proving things out. So a lot of times what I'll do is have our teams build something in Power Apps until we hit some of the limits to it. I haven't invested a lot of time in building a Power App sort of workflow. It might only have been a week's worth of time for a developer to spin up a new app versus it might have been a couple of weeks and several individuals try to build something, custom in .NET with Azure functions and, all sorts of, enterprise level type of coding practices. So, so from that standpoint, I love it. You can get prototypes out in, days, instead of weeks, and really kind of figure out the harder problems that you're trying to solve. So that's a great way to use it. In Power Automate, Power Automate is a tool that allows you to do cloud-based workflows. Essentially, is what it amounts to, and it's really lowering the barrier between for step-by-step automation. I had a call this morning with the sales team and was showing them some of the things that you could do with it, and like I can have it generate sentiment analysis off of a Teams message or a Teams chat. I could have an easy button on my messages in Teams that allow me to schedule a follow-up reminder later. Things along those nature. And you can use Power Automate to create custom prompts that you would use that you can incorporate into different workflows. So I want to trigger some event happening when a file is dropped. I want to trigger some event when an email is dropped. I can set that up in Power Automate and then test out my prompt without having to write any of the code to like get this stuff working end to end. It's a great way to build out and validate some of these workflows. Another way that you can use AI, I mentioned the Dev GPT. So Copilot Studio, creating chatbots, that's a perfect example of, an easy way I can do things like point it at a website if that's where my wiki lives. I could point it at a SharePoint list if that's where some documents live. I could point it at a team site and have it just grounded against those. And the only information it's going to answer is based off of that. Then I can share that chatbot out with the team and have it answer the questions. Um, I mentioned a little bit about the prompts. Here was an example of what I did. So we've got some text that's going to be fed in, and it's just a few steps. Most of this is, you can get kind of like Kickstarter sample prompts and sample workflows in Power Automate. And this is, just basically an example of that. And so what I did is I set something up where anytime a specific individual sent me an email, I tagged it to give me a sentiment analysis and send me a Teams message of what it was. I had to turn it off because I got way too many emails or too many notifications, but it was kind of fun. It was pretty accurate, positive, negative, neutral. And then, the next step in the process is, if you get sentiment analysis that's negative, you want to do something about it. So set up a reminder to follow up with that individual. It's a great use case. I talked a little bit about Power Apps before. I mentioned that. Here's a quick little example that I did. When I was preparing for this, I want to show you some screenshots. As you get into the Power App, make.powerapps.com. Basically, you can start with Copilot, and it'll just ask you describe the problem that you're trying to solve. So describe the data that you're trying to represent. And I said, well, I'm an explorer and I want to track my progress on my journey. So collect things like longitude, latitude, and my check-in status. Am I healthy? Am I having a hard time breathing? Am I tired? And so I can monitor my progress, as I go along. And then it built me this literally no code at all, just a little bit of a prompt, made the app, and I'm off and running. So some of these like forms over data applications that developers build are going to be replaced with tools like this. And then Copilot Studio has an interface where it will actually just through a conversation that you have with it, ask you, what do you want this to be grounded against? What kind of questions would you like it to answer? And it will go through without any developer experience necessary or Copilot Studio experience necessary. It's going to go ahead and build a chatbot for you. I did promise, and maybe some people were looking forward to having the AI coding assistant, sort of talk. I'm going to brush over this a little bit just because Mac's going to be doing this fantastic talk, and I've even done 1 or 2 talks on this already. And I feel like almost every developer that I talked to today is using some variant of GitHub Copilot or Anthropic's Claude. But it is a fantastic tool, and if you're not using it, please, at least give it a shot. It's fantastic to have a pair programmer that's not just giving you like squiggly line hints that you got something wrong, but actually looking at the code and the intent of it and helping you to understand maybe something that's kind of complex. Some simple tasks, 87% of users say it saves effort on your repetitive work. I want to refactor this class or split this into 2 different classes. I want to split this logic out someplace else. Absolutely fantastic at doing repetitive things like that. Or here's my class, create an API using the various REST methods. It's going to generate the boilerplate code. And one of my favorite examples was one of the developers here was like just gushing over Copilot Studio, Copilot, and he's like, I just spent 15 minutes generating all my unit tests, for this API that I built, something that would have taken me, anywhere from 2 to 4 hours before. So absolutely, it's going to save, some of that boilerplate mental, mental load, and get you to be a little bit more focused on solving the harder problems. I mentioned Anthropic's Claude and GitHub Copilot. I'm just going to be candid here. We're a Microsoft partner, but we don't necessarily always just use Microsoft tools. I would say right now the split on the team is about 50-50. People are finding that Claude is is writing better quality code. And it's just a different model, and so it has different results. And both of them are compatible with, Visual Studio Code. They both got plugins if you want to use it. JetBrains, I think you can use any one of the models to kind of go back and forth. But Copilot, GitHub's Copilot's powered by OpenAI's Codex model versus Claude that has the proprietary language model. That's kind of basically the difference between the two of them. Both are reporting really high satisfaction levels in terms of the users that use it, upper 90s. So start using those tools. I wanted to give you just a quick example if you're not familiar with it. Here's a prompt that I had, very simple. Create a new API within an Azure function that returns the current weather. The user should be able to pass a longitude and latitude. And so that was it. I started with a new folder, entered in that prompt, and away it went. And it generated everything that I needed to build and deploy that Azure function with an API embedded in it, including making sure that the longitude and latitude numbers made sense. So it did, some of those checks as well. And then as you're using, something like GitHub Copilot, it's going to kind of auto suggest and monitor the work that you're doing, and you'll see that it gives you suggestions like, hey, did you forget this thing? Or, hey, would you like to also add a method that does this? Again, it's just a partner, it's just somebody sitting next to you, asking you like you need a little bit of help, and giving you a little bit of assistance. So next, I want to talk a little bit about AI and like the DevOps process. I don't have any like data on this per se, but I was speaking to a Microsoft, somebody in the Microsoft team, and even there, they're starting to cut down on the number of cloud engineers that they need and able to support like DevOps. As these tools are starting to be built in directly into Azure, I think it's still available in free view, the Copilot in Azure, and allows you to kind of like do some of that app insights monitoring, or like digging in for problems, or deploying a new Azure resource, things along those nature. So, but inside the app, today, some of the tooling inside of like your application lifecycle, you can, use it to enhance your CI/CD process. It can, the Copilots now can take a look at your deployment scripts and, look for ways to optimize them. If you can't remember exactly what YAML, you needed to use for a specific type of resource or to perform a specific action, the tools are starting to have built-in capabilities to like coach you on that. You can take a project and have it automatically generate a CI/CD pipeline for you without like doing anything. Just say, hey, I need this to go to this, this subscription in Azure, and it's going to generate everything that it needs. And you can have a conversation with it. It says, do you want to put this in Key Vault? Or how would you like to manage some of these secret keys? So, just automating some of that routine tasks. Again, most developers, they're sort of expected to support a lot of these different workflows, and they may not have like a lot of depth in CI/CD, but now that we have some of these tools available to them, they can be more effective, get the things done, ask less questions of their coworkers, et cetera. And then the last thing, was better debugging and stuff like that. I think I might have like a little bit better slide on this. I'm also seeing some of the marketplace tools coming out that are really cool. One that I was playing around with last week was this Copilot for DevOps. And that was a really fantastic tool. Doesn't sound like what it really is, but the thing that I like the most about it is that you can ask it to like uh, help me organize my backlog a little bit better, help me identify where I might have a gap in new features, and giving you a ChatGPT interface that has knowledge about your code, knowledge about your backlog, and what types of things that users are asking for. So fantastic tools. If you go into the Visual Studio Marketplace and just search for AI, like you're just going to get 100 different things that you can play with. So a lot of tools. Microsoft has a bunch of them as well. If you're looking to stay just native to the Microsoft ecosystem, and so take a look at that. Monitoring, though, I mentioned this before. Monitoring is usually the bane of anybody's existence. Nobody wants to watch for problems. When problems happen, they just want to get notified of it. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people have a mailbox that is filled with, a couple thousand messages a day of just pings or just little noisy things that happen. You can use AI to like filter out those things as they come in. And sure, maybe it's sending an email, maybe it's sending a notification or a message every 5 minutes, or every time an action is performed, it's spitting off an event into your mailbox that you've filtered and completely ignore. Now you can actually pre-filter them with AI. Look for, is this a problem? Yes, it's a problem. Go ahead and alert the user. If it's not a problem, just don't even send the message. Really fantastic at that. You can also use it to monitor things like degradations, and like is something, am I starting to see more frequency of things? And using AI to predict outages ahead of time is something that I'm seeing a lot of companies starting to investigate. And using with a variety of different tools, App Insights, Azure Monitor, SQL logs, things like that is good. And then kind of last thing I want to talk about is like what are some things that you should know about? Well, I think the biggest one that I can talk about today would be that GitHub just recently, like this is brand new kind of announcement, Copilot goes free, right? So there's now a free plan for GitHub Copilot inside of Visual Studio, and any developer can use it with some limitations. I think it's like 2000, 2000 suggestions or something like that is kind of like a limitation. But that's a fantastic, everybody's going to get an opportunity to use it. You don't have to pay for it anymore. So go ahead and try it out if you didn't want to spend the $20 a month. And they've got some new features in there too. I think the most useful thing is like this multi-file code refactoring. So I've got a bunch of service classes, and they all follow the same pattern. I want to refactor some things out of it. I can use Copilot's new Copilot edit feature and edit like those 20 different files without having to go on every one of them. Really, really good time saver. And then JetBrains has like, some really great tools. I've been a huge fan of JetBrains for a long time. I found myself not paying for JetBrains the last couple of years as the Microsoft tooling is sort of caught up to what JetBrains was good at. But last year at Build, I was pretty impressed with what they were doing. When I was visiting with them, and recently they've had some other new announcements, like the Junie AI coding assistant updates and what it's capable of doing. And it doesn't lock you into a specific generative LLM, so you can start using different models with that as well. And then Microsoft is really investing a lot in the DevOps space. So I think you're going to see announcements coming out on a bi-weekly or monthly basis around what's there. And then the last thing I thought I'd bring up is the quantum computing. Microsoft just announced that they made a very significant technological advancement in quantum computing, and showcased the release of their quantum chip. I've been reading quite a bit about this, and this is like similar to my feelings about DeepSeek and whether how revolutionary that really was. I think that the quantum computing isn't quite here yet. It's not like in 6 months you're going to be able to go out and buy this quantum chip. But and there's some serious significant debate going on in the marketplace about if what Microsoft talked about is actually real. So I don't think we've actually really seen it in action. And until we do, I think it's not so much vaporware, but it's an exciting announcement. I know there's other companies that have had news, have been in the news recently about their advancements in quantum computing as well. And I think that's, that generally speaking, that's right around the corner. Um, so what about my predictions? What do I think is going to happen in 2025? So I think that you're going to see things like co-developers become a reality. I watched a video a couple days ago, shared it with everybody in the team about Manus AI, and it was just absolutely mind-blowing. And if you haven't seen it yet, go take a look at Manus. Long waiting list, couple million people to get into it, but take a look at what it's able to do. It demonstrated to me that it really is going to be autonomous pair programmers. I'm going to be able to write out some user stories and ask my Copilot to just go do this thing, submit a pull request, and we'll review it together later. So I think you're going to see co-development start to become a reality this year. I don't think it'll be widely adopted, but I think it's going to be a reality. And then you're going to see more maturity in probably at Build. You're going to see some fantastic news come out around the low code tools. So Power Automate, Copilot Studio. I would expect to see some of those tools start to work together a little bit more seamlessly, maybe even co-branded. But the general expectation is that you're not going to need a software engineer or even more than a business analyst to create low-code environments. You'll see more natural language coding start to evolve, and then more DevOps, more DevOps, more DevOps. Most of the DevOps processes are things that, yes, there are individuals who are specialized in it, but they are things that are easily automated through AI. And so we're going to see a lot of developments in that space. Most importantly, I think that you're just going to see happier developers. They're going to be able to focus on the harder problems. I think what did I used in the office, to quote myself, was probably a lot less programmer analysts and a lot more software engineering roles are going to be available by the end of 2025. Here's the GitHub free plan. There's the numbers that I was talking about. 2,000 AI generated code completions per month, 50 chat queries per month at no cost. So it's not, it's going to have some limitations. Maybe if you're going to use a free account, be a little bit conscientious of what you're asking it because you run out in a day. I would say that most of our developers run through 50 chat queries a day anyways. But hey, if you're just looking to get started or you don't do a ton of programming every day, great way to get your feet wet and figure out how that works. But let's talk a little bit about how concurrency can help you. What are some of the next steps? So basically, let's take some of these steps together. Concurrency is offering free workshops, assessments. We can come in and do some ideation with you. Take a look at what you're currently using AI for today, so reach out to us if you want to take that next step. Definitely, if you have an idea where you want to leverage pilot or pilot like some AI workloads or just how am I going to do this, Concurrency's got some experience and depth that we can help you there. And then, definitely empower your team. We can help with some of the coaching on that as well. So how can Concurrency help with that? We have a couple of different momentum programs to encourage users to start using some of these AI tools like M365. And I'd love to talk with you a little bit more about that and see if there's any challenges or any feedback, how your team's using it. I'd love to do it. And then last but not least, this isn't really a concurrency action, it's an action on you. Get out there, do something. Start using these tools and have fun with it. Let AI turbocharge your development. And I'll stick around for a minute or two. If there's any questions, we can do a little Q&A. Otherwise, thanks for joining us today. Really had a great time.